Hi, it's Peter here again from True North Marine and the Maritime Tutor. In this short video, I want to run through the definitions, now Rule 3 of the Colregs. So if you're studying the Colregs, this is an extremely important component to understand. I was a trainer and assessor for over 20 years, and I can tell you the majority of times when people misunderstood or misinterpreted the rules was because they didn't read the definitions. There's not a lot in the definitions. This should only be a short video, but the words that are used and how they're intended to be interpreted is extremely important. So it may be a case where you need to look at this video more than once to get your head around it. Some of them do make sense when you read the rule, but then others require just a little bit of thought to make sure you've got the correct interpretation of what those words actually mean within the rules. Okay, let's get started. So just before we start, if you do need your marine radio license, which of course is a requirement for all marine radio operators, so if you have a radio on your recreational or commercial vessel, you do need to have a radio license. Just go to our website at truenorthmarine.com.au. And for over 20 years, we've also been conducting coastal navigation, which is a very important component for all boat operators, whether you're recreational or commercial. You only have to think of the very first question you'd be asked in an emergency, and that would be, where are you? And of course, to tell people where you are, you need to give a latitude and longitude for help to get you. So make sure you have the basics of coastal navigation. Okay, let's get back to our Colregs, and Rule 3 in particular, general definitions. So you can see on the screen here, we've got some words that are circled: every vessel, power-driven vessel, two sailing vessels, vessel engaged in fishing, a power-driven vessel when towing, a vessel not under command or restricting their ability to manoeuvre, anchored vessels, and vessels aground. So here's the first one. The word vessel means every description of watercraft. And now I'm not going to read it all out to you. You can read that on the screen. But essentially, if it's floating, it's a vessel. Power-driven vessel. And this one is fairly straightforward as well. It means any vessel propelled by machinery. Now, the notation on the bottom of the screen there is important. A vessel lying stopped in the water is still a power-driven vessel, even though its engines and propeller may not be in use. In other words, there's nothing stopping that vessel from manoeuvring or being propelled if it wanted to. So therefore, it's still a power-driven vessel. This one is very important and gets misinterpreted quite a lot. A sailing vessel means any vessel under sail, provided that the propelling machinery, if fitted, is not being used. So in other words, if a vessel is just under sail, it's a sailing vessel. But if it has machinery and it uses that machinery, then it is a power-driven vessel. So on this slide, we've got vessel engaged in fishing, which means where the method of fishing, whether it be with nets, lines, trawls, or other fishing apparatus, restricts manoeuvrability of the vessel, then the vessel would be engaged in fishing. If it does not do that, then the vessel is not engaged in fishing and would be just treated as a power-driven vessel. A seaplane, when a seaplane is on the water, it is deemed to be a vessel. Here's one that does cause some confusion: not under command. So we really need to nail this one. Not under command means a vessel which through some exceptional circumstance is unable to manoeuvre as required by the rules. Now, there are lots of examples of some exceptional circumstance. The most common ones, of course, would be an engine breakdown or loss of steerage. But it's important not to look too deep into the reason why the other vessel is displaying this. There could be a lot of reasons why. They're not in distress. They don't require assistance. What they're telling you, though, is that they cannot comply with the rules, and therefore the onus would be on us to keep out of their way. It's as simple as that. What the rules do tell us, though, is bad weather conditions are not really exceptional in the terms of the rules. So any difficulty a vessel may have in manoeuvring in bad weather would not justify them showing not under command signals. Simply stopped with your engines would not be regarded as not under command. This one is also important, restricting her ability to manoeuvre. This means where a vessel, by the nature of her work, there's a very key phrase there, very key part of the sentence there is related to restricting her ability to manoeuvre by the nature of work. They do give some examples here. A vessel engaged in laying or servicing or picking up a navigational mark or a submarine cable or pipeline. A vessel engaged in dredging, surveying or underwater operations. A vessel engaged in replenishment or transferring persons, cargo or provisions while underway. A vessel engaged in launching and recovery of aircraft. A vessel engaged in mine clearance operations. And a vessel engaged in towing, where that towing operation is such that it severely restricts the towing vessel and her tow in their ability to deviate from their course. So there's just some examples. And the rules that tell us that the examples are not limited to these ones just shown on the screen. The key part is to remember is the vessel is engaged in some work activity that restricts her manoeuvrability. And this doesn't apply just to big vessels. Quite often you'll see in harbour environments where a vessel may be undertaking survey of the seabed, sounding the seabed, checking on the depths of the seabed. It could be a small vessel. I've seen many that are around 10, 12, 15 metres in size, but they're displaying these signals because it's critical to them undertaking that work activity that they're not impeded in the process of going backwards and forwards across the harbour environment. Definition of constrained by her draft. This means a power-driven vessel, so it doesn't mean a sailing vessel. It's clear in this part of the rule. It says means a power-driven vessel, which, because of her draft in relation to the depth and width of navigable waters, it could be related to the width of the channel as well as the depth. So either way, this vessel is now severely restricted in her ability to deviate from her course. There are some of the rules there that, in particular sound signals, that require us to have the understanding of what is underway and what is making way. So the word underway within the meaning of the rules is when a vessel is not at anchor, made fast to shore or aground. Now that word will also come into play in respect to, say, Rule 30. Rule 30 is vessels at anchor or aground. So we can clearly see there also that if a vessel is at anchor or aground, then they are certainly not underway. This is another very important one as well, because this comes down to sound signals. Another definition is when vessels are in sight of one another. So in sight of one another is when you can visually see another vessel. If another vessel becomes obscured through fog, mist, rain squalls, etc., then you would not be in sight of one another. Restricted visibility is another important phrase within the definitions. It means any condition which restricts visibility. Fog, mist, falling snow, heavy rainstorms, sandstorms, or similar circumstances or causes. And here's another definition, winging ground, wig, which is related to a craft that flies just above the surface of the water. So there you have it, the definitions under the Colregs. Extremely important part of the rules. Don't fall into the trap of disregarding the definitions like a lot of people do, because it certainly makes understanding the majority of the other rules very difficult.